The following views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guest appearing on the episode and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Dr. Jazz or Comfort Kills Media. Viewer discretion is advised. Blindsided by her 14-year-old daughter's suicide attempt in 1995, today's Comfort Kills guest entered a world of depression, addiction, medical mysteries, and deadly silences. The journey into the worlds of mental health services and cultural taboos left Jackie Simmons feeling lost and alone. It wasn't until 24 years later, when her daughter took the stage and broke the silence, where Jackie finally felt a purpose had tapped on her shoulder. Jackie is here today to tell us about the movement to make teen suicide a thing of the past, to spearhead suicide intervention with forward-thinking suicide prevention. Welcome, Jackie. I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to Comfort Kills. I am just really eager to have this conversation with you. I think right now, more than ever, with all things going on in the world, that mental health needs to be addressed more and more and more, right? We've always said it before, but I don't know if we've ever really practiced it. We hear about it in the news, we hear about it, it's a hot topic, but are we truly practicing it the way that we do? So I would love to introduce you, or for you to introduce yourself, and just let our listeners know who you are and what your story looks like.
Oh my God, who I am. That's a really good question. If you had asked me 2 years ago who I am, I'm Jackie Simmons. I'm the creator of Success Journey Academy. I teach entrepreneurial women how to wrap a business around what they're good at. I teach sales from the inside out, how to sell yourself on yourself. That's how I introduced myself 2 years ago. And then at my own event, my 37-year-old daughter gave a 7-minute talk, message that matters. That's what I used to teach, how to deliver messages that matter in 7 minutes, how to sell in 7 minutes or less. I welcomed her to the front of the room, Dr. Jazz. And she started her talk by saying, 3,000 teenagers will attempt to take their lives today. In the back of the room, I'm like, what the hell? One, I had no idea the number was that large.
I had no idea either.
I also had no idea suicide was her topic.
Oh.
And then she said, when I was 14, after a bad day of shopping, I stood in my bathroom. The pain of not fitting into any clothes was just more proof that I didn't fit in anywhere.
Oh, wow.
So I took a razor and cut into my left arm, trying to end the pain and my life. Have you ever been hijacked by a bad memory? In the back of the room, I could feel the blood drain from my face, because while I had lived through that with her, we really hadn't talked about it.
Okay.
She kept going. Her next sentence was, it wasn't my only attempt. There were others. And outside of professional help, I've never really talked about it, especially not with Mom. Mom and I had the other talks. Mom and I had the talk about sex, and we had the talk about drugs, and then we had the talk about alcohol. Then I went to college on a dry campus. That means the kegs were hidden in the showers of the girls' dorm. Mom and I had to talk about alcohol more than once. But we didn't talk about suicide. It was too awkward, too painful, too easy to avoid. I still struggle with suicidal thoughts. In the back of the room, 30 years of stress management training, Dr. Jazz, 30 years. That's the only reason I didn't just crawl into a corner and
Wow.
I went from pale to bone cold.
Mm.
I realized the struggles that Stephanie, my daughter, had faced alone because
Mhm.
I didn't have the courage to have the talk about suicide.
Mm. Mhm.
Stephanie wound up her talk saying, on my suicide avoidant journey,
Mhm.
I've learned tons of coping skills.
Mhm.
Now I want to teach those skills to teens before they need them.
Yeah.
Before they need them.
Before, yeah.
There wasn't a dry eye in the house, including
Oh.
she got a standing ovation and people were rushing up and hugging her and thanking her for being so brave and so
Right.
vulnerable. And in the back of the room, I was frozen.
Mhm.
I was totally torn between pride for her bravery
Mhm.
and guilt and shame,
Mm.
my cowardice, my silence.
Mm.
Then it hit me 3,000 teens attempt to take their own lives every day.
Yeah.
That means 6,000 parents every day start to live the guilt nightmare that I've lived
Mhm. Every day.
every day. And that means every day over 20,000 grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters
Mm.
get drawn into the guilt nightmare. And what really shocked me was when my brain went, holy crap, that means hundreds of thousands of classmates,
Mhm.
teachers, boyfriends, girlfriends, and neighbors
Right.
get pulled into the guilt nightmare that I'd lived every
Mhm.
all probably just as blindsided by it as I had been.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, then I asked, then I thought about it. I thought about what Stephanie had said. Now, everybody's still around her in the front of the room, and I'm going, holy crap, what if she's right? What
Mhm.
if the way to stop teen suicide is as simple as having the talk about suicide before you think they need it, before your loved one is struggling with suicidal thoughts? I mean,
Yeah.
this was so simple and obvious. We've all tripped over it, especially the professionals.
Mm.
Yeah, like simple and obvious, like putting wheels on luggage,
Mhm.
putting ketchup in bottles you can squeeze. I
Mhm.
don't know about you, but I remember the glass bottles and the knife. Yeah,
Yes, I do too.
simple and obvious.
Oh, wow.
After that event, Stephanie and I decided to work together.
Mhm.
Who knew that was going to be possible?
Oh, wow.
With her sisters, we co founded the Teen Suicide Prevention Society and we started teaching people the skills. The
Okay.
What we discovered is that the talk about suicide is not about intervention and it's not about at risk anybody and it's not about waiting for signs. It's about
Mm.
having the talk before you think it's needed.
Mhm.
What we ended up with was a short, simple guide. Think of it as a science based, yeah, boy, definitely neuroscience based script that you
Okay.
don't have to memorize. Super simple. And the
Mhm.
script is designed to work with the way the teen brain really works.
Mm.
Before the prefrontal cortex is fully built out.
Right. Yeah.
And it's designed to alert you for when intervention is needed.
Mm.
And just using the guide, just reading it and practicing it with someone
Mhm.
builds emotional resiliency in both of you at the same time.
Mhm.
It's like, how do you make it impossible for
Mhm.
suicidal thoughts to get stuck in your head? That's what the script does.
Okay.
What we discovered was that most suicide prevention programs
Mhm.
are intervention focused.
Yes, I could see that.
The hotlines, you don't
Mhm.
call a hotline until you know you're at risk.
No, they're called crisis prevention hotlines. Yeah.
That's right. And everything else, you needed a mental health diagnosis, you needed
Mm.
to be in an at-risk teen program,
Mhm.
or you needed to have a previous attempt.
Mm.
And we're like, wait a minute, what's the problem? Well, the question they're asking is how do you stop suicide?
Mhm.
So that's an important question. And my daughter survived 13 more attempts.
Mm. Wow.
If it wasn't for the intervention specialists, she might not be here. So I have nothing but gratitude for the people on the intervention side.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm not an intervention specialist.
Mhm.
I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a clinician. What I am is a stress management consultant who's been in sales for decades. And what I realized is that we're selling ourselves on leaving, and that's why
Mhm.
we need intervention. What if we could sell ourselves on staying? What if we could
Hmm.
into the reasons for staying? And that's how the script got invented. That's how the talk came about.
Okay.
Was the instead of how do we stop suicide?
Mhm.
How do we stop suicidal thinking from getting
Mm.
stuck in someone's head?
Mhm.
It's a different question, and we came up with a different answer.
Okay.
Now, we came up with what's now a full program. It's called the Talks That Saved Lives,
Uh-huh.
and it's 6 hours of training over 4 weeks or 2 weekends, 2 half days. Yeah.
Mhm.
So 6 hours of training, and it's the talk to stop suicide. And people just get to go out and practice that with their loved ones. We call it
Mhm.
suicide proofing your friends.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it's the talk to stop negative thinking, the talk to stop bullying, and the talk to stop self sabotage.
Mm.
And they are all based on how your brain really works, how to hack into the part of your mind that is designed for negative thinking and get it on
Mhm.
your behalf.
Okay. Wow. So, Jackie, I want to take it back a couple steps and let's take you back to perhaps the first attempt or any of the attempts that you don't mind recollecting at this time. Because I think that this is something that maybe people who are in this far into this podcast or video, they at this point they are looking for those similarities that maybe they're currently going through, even though we want to emphasize the prevention beforehand and instead of having to wait until an intervention needs to take place. I think there is power in you sharing some of the thoughts that were going on in your mind at that time and how you came out of it and what you took as next steps to persevere and to bring your daughter, help her come out of it even though there were
All right,
more
stop.
attempts.
I just have to tell the truth here.
Okay.
It's not my fault that Stephanie is still alive. Okay. It's the intervention specialist.
Mm.
The only reason I can have this conversation with you is
Mhm.
because I had a TEDx coach who
Mhm.
said, Jackie, you're going to have to tell the story
Yeah.
of the day that Stephanie first attempted. And I blurted into the phone. I'm like, Roger, it was just a day. There was nothing special about it. It was just a day until it wasn't.
Mhm.
And he said, can you ask your daughter about that day? Because I had no memory. I mean, I had zero memory of that day.
Mhm.
So I called Stephanie. This was like not the most comfortable phone call.
Mhm.
And it went like this. Stephanie, I'm going to do a TEDx talk. They want me to tell the story
Mhm.
of that day when you were 14, and I don't remember.
Mhm.
And thank God the pause was not very long.
Okay.
And what came out of her mouth was a belly laugh.
Oh.
It was, Mom, it was the shopping.
Oh.
And I went, the shopping. And so we pieced together
Mhm.
what happened that day. I've got 3 daughters. It was June 1995. They
Mhm.
were all in middle school and high school. They were getting ready to go visit their dad and his family for the summer.
Mhm.
Yes, I don't know if you've got kids, but you were a
I
girl.
do.
You are a girl.
Mhm.
That kind of a trip at the beginning of the summer planning, that means what? Shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Stephanie was 14. She was in between her sisters,
Mhm.
in between schools, that period between middle school and high school,
Mhm.
and in between clothing sizes.
Okay.
Nothing fit her.
Yeah.
Outfit after outfit, store after store. By the end of the day, we
Mhm.
came up with nothing except
Oh.
an attitude.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stephanie headed straight upstairs to the bathroom. I
Mm.
collapsed on the sofa in the living room, just grateful to be off my feet, peace and
Mhm.
quiet.
Mhm.
And then, Mom, I think I need help. And my eyes were drawn to Stephanie's left arm.
Mhm.
Blood was dripping off her fingers onto the wood floor.
Mm.
The emotional part of my brain started panicking at the
Mhm.
sight of my bleeding, obviously suicidal child.
Right.
The rational part of my brain started flipping through the files trying to find the date of her last tetanus shot.
Mm.
Have you ever been calm and panicky at the same time?
I feel like maybe a few times here and there, but not to this extent. No.
I
Wow.
wrapped her in my arms and assessed the wounds, and they
Mhm.
were not life threatening. We applied bandages and made plans to visit the local teen mental health facility the next day.
Mhm.
And eventually, our tears stopped and our mutual I'm sorries were shared, and she slept.
Mhm.
I couldn't risk being away from her, so we were sleeping in the living room.
Right. Yeah.
Between us was her handwritten note, her promise not to harm herself while I slept.
Mhm. Oh.
Yeah, right. Like I was going to close my eyes that night.
Right. Wow.
All night I stared into the darkness and listened to her breathe.
Mhm.
And I was grateful she was still alive. And my thoughts just swirled. Like, what just happened?
Mhm.
You know, how did this happen? We
Right.
were a stable middle class American family. How did
Yeah.
this happen?
Oh, wow.
And who's to blame?
Mhm.
It had to be somebody's fault, right?
Mhm. Mm.
After that night, counseling,
Mhm.
therapy,
Mhm.
medications, interventions, more attempts. And Dr. Jazz, as long as she was getting professional help,
Mhm.
I sold myself on the idea that we didn't need to talk about it.
Mm.
I mean, would you want to? Would you want to know what could cause your child so much mental and emotional pain that they thought dying was better than living?
No, no, I would definitely I think I would be blaming myself. I would say there's something I'm doing wrong and I don't know if I would be able to face that.
I didn't want to know, so I didn't ask.
Mhm.
And the silence lasted 23 years
Mm.
until Stephanie broke the silence that
Mhm.
day on August 3rd, 2019.
Wow.
Looking back, I'm like, okay, I had my own two bouts of clinical depression. I had 30 years of stress management training. I
Mhm.
coined the term stress management consultant. I mean, I predate the whole coaching industry.
Mhm.
I've been on this journey to try to figure this out, what was going on inside of me mentally and emotionally, what was going on inside of my daughter mentally and emotionally.
Mhm.
And yet, the whole time, there was this power, and we're going to call it stigma. Stigma is a power. There's also peer pressure. Peer pressure is a power.
Mhm.
These things were impacting me and keeping me silent.
Mm.
They were not just keeping me silent with my daughter,
Mhm.
but they created this. I'm going to come up with a name for this because, I mean, on the surface, I am a successful entrepreneur. I went to hundreds of networking events. I gave out thousands of business cards. I taught a course called Confessions of a
Mhm.
Networking Junkie.
Mm.
I built up a ton of goodwill. And on the business side, I was getting by.
Mm-hmm.
It was good enough.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand, and neither did any of my coaches. I mean, I hired and paid time, talent, and treasure. I
Mm-hmm.
invested in my business, and they could not figure it out. It wasn't until my daughter broke the silence,
Mm-hmm.
August 3rd, 2019, and we went into the whole process of publishing a book to help teenagers break the silence and creating the program, the Talks That Save Lives, and
Mm-hmm.
standing on a TEDx stage.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I stood on the TEDx stage
Mm.
and watched what happened next. Between February and March, I helped one of my affiliates close $1.3 million in sales in 6 weeks.
Okay.
And I'm like, who the, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so they asked me to come in and teach and to share what that was like. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I did, somebody said, Jackie, what is your secret sauce?
Mm-hmm.
And then I got it, Jess. I had no more secrets.
Mm. Oh, wow.
I could be authentic.
Yeah.
No agenda. I didn't care whether
Uh-huh.
somebody said yes or no. I
Yeah.
had no attachment to the outcome and I had nothing more to hide.
Hmm.
This made sense to my brain, so I shared what made sense to my brain without
Mm-hmm.
any agenda, without any attachment. And when
Mm-hmm.
you let go of agenda and attachment, you become more authentic
Mm-hmm.
and people are aware.
Yeah.
We may not be consciously aware of who's authentic and who isn't, but our guts tell us.
Mm-hmm.
It was the most amazing shift for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I realized that no more secrets. You
Yeah.
know, you want to know what this journey was like? I will tell you that 23 years of silence
Mm-hmm.
sucked.
Mm.
For
Yeah.
23 years, I walked on eggshells. For 23 years, I didn't call her out on anything because I was afraid of tripping her back. For
Oh,
23 years, I didn't talk about suicide because I was afraid of putting the idea back into her head. Do you want
yeah.
to know what's really insane? Think about this. She had
Mm-hmm.
13 more attempts. You think at some point I would have figured out that the idea was already in her head?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
No, I was so afraid of being the cause to her effect
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I couldn't speak on this topic.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
The minute that we co-founded the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, April 1st, 2020, it happened to coincide when COVID hit. Who knew?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I started introducing myself as a co-founder of the
Mm-hmm.
Teen Suicide Prevention Society.
Yeah.
People started telling me their stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was hosting a summit called the Woman Entrepreneur Show. And at the end of each interview, I started asking, why did you say yes to working with me, knowing that all the proceeds go to support the Teen Suicide Prevention Society? What's
Mm-hmm.
about this is important to you?
Mm.
Every single professional business guru that I was interviewing
Uh-huh.
had a story.
Yeah, I believe it.
And I was like, what is going on? And they were willing to tell them. I mean, I have some of the most, I've got the last protege of Napoleon Hill
Mm-hmm.
telling his story and sharing Augmendino, the man who wrote the Four Agreements, sharing Augmendino's story.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people you know have had their lives touched by suicide.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's the elephant in the room that
Mm-hmm.
still
Yep.
hesitating to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So by swinging from intervention to pure prevention,
Mm-hmm.
we've created a safe place for people to have the conversation without having to be afraid that somebody's going to think they need help.
Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's the worst thing you can say to somebody. The next worst thing you can say to somebody is, you just need a checkup from the neck up.
Mm. Mm.
The
Mm.
next worst thing you can say to someone is, get over it.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a whole list, and there's a bunch of TEDx speakers who are now sharing their stories about what not to do, what's the worst
Mhm.
thing to do. Here's the best thing to do,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Okay.
Assume they are at risk.
Okay.
Just assume that they are struggling and they're afraid to share it. They're
Mhm.
afraid to show up as anything less than perfect, like I was.
Mhm.
Assume. I call it the suicide war with two A's. We're all at risk.
Okay.
Okay. So I call it the suicide war.
Okay.
If you assume that everyone you meet is at
Yeah.
risk,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're no longer investing any energy in looking for signs. Oh, by the way, we think waiting for signs is
Mm.
looking for trouble.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Because in this day and age, most of the time, the first sign that someone you love is at risk for suicide is an attempt,
Mm.
and they don't all survive.
Mhm. Yeah.
So instead of that, what if?
Mhm.
What if you said to your friend, "Hey, I'm part of the mission to stop teen suicide.
Mhm.
I have a script I need to practice. Can I practice with you tomorrow? It'll only take about 5 minutes."
Hmm. Okay.
That's the response we get. Okay. Why?
Yeah.
We've made it safe.
Yeah. It's not personal.
It's not personal. It's not about you. I don't think you're at risk. I'm part of this movement, this mission,
Mhm.
suicide a thing of the past. I have to practice a script. I'm going to be reading it, and I need your help to practice it.
Yeah.
In that moment, your brain changes
Yeah.
because now you know you're going to help me.
Uh-huh.
So, are you okay with helping me with this?
Yeah, yeah, I would love to. I would love to be of assistance.
All right. So, here's how it goes.
Mhm.
Dr. Jazz, thank you for helping me practice my script. It's only 4 questions. You ready?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Question 1.
Mhm.
Have you heard about the rise in teen suicides?
Not 100%. I know there is. I can presume that there is, but I don't know what the details are.
Thank you. Question 2. Do you have a story? Do you have a friend who's tried or died?
I do have stories to share. Yes.
Thank you. Question 3. Have you ever thought of leaving that way?
No. No. I think the experience that I had as a child, with a peer in the same school and his attempts really made me realize those who are left behind, the pain that you have with them as well.
Thank you. Question 4. Why stay? What are your reasons for staying?
I love that question. This point in my life, I think I stay because of my children. I stay because of my family, and I wouldn't want my mom to have to bury me first, and I wouldn't want my children to have to bury me at this young in their age.
What else?
Um, I I don't think it's, and I hate to offend anybody, but I don't think it's
Just
the
go
right
ahead.
way to go.
Is it okay for me to make it easier for you?
Sure, sure.
What's so good about your life that you want more of it?
I'm not ready to go yet. I still have a lot of dreams and goals and ambitions to reach.
So, anyone watching this show, and when you watch the video,
Mhm.
you will see the shift in your body.
Yeah.
It's absolutely visible, Dr. Jazz. When
Okay.
you started tapping into your reasons for staying and what was so good about your life that you
Uh-huh.
want more of it, your brain, here's the neuroscience,
Mhm.
your brain started building out a new neural pathway
Okay.
and a new net. And the more you talk about, the more you share your reasons for staying,
Mhm.
brain is building out this new network. And what that means is that when you have a naturally, by the way, suicidal thoughts are normal,
Mhm.
or it said so, It's part of our worst case scenario. It's part of our problem solving mechanism. When you have a thought about leaving now, it's going to hit a new filter in your brain. Your reticular activating system now has this filter because it's a new file, and the file is labeled reasons for staying. And so because the naturally occurring negative thinking has to hit and get through this file, this filter, if you will, you are less likely to get caught in that loop of negative thinking. So congratulations, you have just given yourself a buffer between yourself and the edge.
Yeah. No, and I like it because now I feel my mood feels lifted. I feel like, just like we were talking before we even hit record, that I'm thankful that it's Friday and work has been stressful, but not that I would end my life over how stressful life at work can be. I think I would end my work first, but I just feel much better already. It's a Friday evening when we were recording this, and I am just like exhausted from the stressors of work life. But now I feel much more uplifted, and I think I want to go and spend time with my family after this. And so definitely, I see where I surpass those negative thinking processes and the tired and the exhaustion and everything that I was feeling when we first started, and now just kind of feeling like happy again. It put me in a better mood.
Your subconscious mind cannot argue with your own direct experience. So when you tap into what's so good about my life that I want more of it, what are my reasons for staying, all of a sudden, all of the negative stuff that you're exposed to slides off like you're coated in emotional Teflon. And that's the effect that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Prior to doing this talk, the talk that stopped suicide, you're like coated with Velcro. I used to walk around in a suit of emotional Velcro that was negatively charged. I'd walk into a networking event or party, and by the time I got to the other side of the room, everybody's negative emotions were stuck to my Velcro. And it was me. And once I realized that we could coat ourselves with emotional Teflon, now other people's emotions, other people's judgments, opinions, and expectations stay other people's, and they slide off of me like I'm coated with emotional Teflon. That's what we decided to create, was the course that would give people this coating of emotional Teflon.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you just experienced it. All of the heaviness of your work week just slid off.
Absolutely.
And it's as simple as answering 4 questions.
Right. And I, and as you were asking the questions, Jackie, I felt like the one where it was asking, what experiences have I encountered, or how did I feel when that happened? I can't remember the precise question, but it really took me back to a really dark place, and thinking about those different situations that have happened as I was growing up made me think how dark and heavy that was. But then ending it on the last 2 questions, those 2 notes really, okay, but that's not my story, or that's not my current story, and here is my current why, and here's my current reasons to why I want to continue living and seeing out the rest of my life, because I still have so much more to do. And so, yeah.
The questions are written in very precise, neutral language so that it's safe. And so that the person asking the questions is prevented from probing. We don't want anybody to get re-traumatized.
Right.
So the structure of the guide prevents probing with a practice partner. But here's what's interesting. When someone says yes to question 3, they have thoughts of leaving. And they don't have zero reasons for staying. There's nothing so good in their life that they want more of it. That's when we stay with you and we call 911.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have thoughts of leaving and zero reasons for staying, I'm not going to ask, do you have a plan? Which is what most intervention programs would ask next.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to get you in with somebody who can help you.
Okay.
Period. So here's how I say it.
Mm-hmm.
They have thoughts of leaving and zero reasons for staying. Stay
Mm-hmm.
with them and call 911. They'll hate you for it, and you might save their life.
Yeah.
Now, in America, we also have 988.
Mm-hmm.
This is the new shortcut to the National Crisis Intervention Suicide Prevention Hotline.
Huh.
The 800 I don't want to mess this up. Just a second, 800-273-8255.
Okay.
I have it saved in my phone under help.
Okay.
But just a few months ago, the United States government approved the 988 shortcut.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah. 911 is for the emergency room and the police. 988 is your crisis intervention, suicide intervention hotline.
Huh.
Okay. So we have those two options.
Okay.
And my belief is that if someone you care about doesn't have reasons for staying, now you cannot give someone reasons for staying.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just want to point this out.
Right.
As a matter of fact, if somebody looks at the comments on my TEDx talk,
Uh-huh.
Dr. Marnie wrote in her comments, and I almost cried
Mm.
when I read them because she was sure that her husband saw the same reasons for staying that she saw for him,
Oh.
but she was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
The saddest words I've ever heard, I hear way too often.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we created the website. You can't tell by looking.
Mm-hmm.
At that website, people can get a suicide risk factor assessment. They can start to understand just how at risk they are and their families are based on their internal and external environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they can get the guide for the talk that saves lives, for the
Mm-hmm.
talk to stop suicide. What we're
Yeah.
doing at the Teen Suicide Prevention Society, we are actively seeking sponsors so
Mm-hmm.
that we can provide the talks that save lives for minimal cost.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 6-hour training. We deliver it either 90 minutes over, 90 minutes a week over 4 weeks, or 2 3-hour sessions
Mm-hmm.
on weekends. And we're just looking for people who want to be part of the mission to make suicide, especially teen suicide, a
Mm-hmm.
thing of the past. And somebody said, Jackie, why did you focus on teen suicide?
Yeah.
Well, let me just go here.
Mm-hmm.
That's my experience. I know what it's
Mm-hmm.
like to be the mother of a teen and be totally blindsided by my child's suicide attempt.
Mm-hmm.
Reason number one. Reason number two, think
Mm-hmm.
about this linearly. When someone who is 70 takes their
Mm-hmm.
own life, we lose 17 years of potential.
Mm-hmm.
When someone who is 17 takes their
Mm-hmm.
own life, we lose 70 years of potential.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why teens. And by the way, hey, Dr. Jazz,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too personal,
Okay.
but have you ever been a teenager?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe if you ask my mom, I think I went from like 12 to 21. So I may have skipped those years somehow.
Everybody went through it.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone went through a time when we just couldn't think. Most people don't understand that the reason teens are more at risk for suicide than somebody who is in their 40s
Mm-hmm.
is because they're missing part of their brain.
Mm-hmm.
The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, and that's the part that has the pause button in it that gives perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When I wrote my first TEDx script, I got called out by my TEDx coach for being tactical and not vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
That tactical script became the Why Not workbook.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it was important for people to understand how the natural negative bias of their brain really works,
Mm-hmm.
what's really happening. So Freud said suicidal thoughts are normal.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a thought of taking your own life. You've got a thought of, usually it shows up as, I can't take this anymore. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not willing to live this anymore. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And it just passes
Yeah.
unless you know someone who's tried or died.
Mm-hmm.
Like then it goes, is that a suicidal thought? Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to have a suicidal thought. And so then you start
Mm.
struggling not to think about it.
Okay.
When you're afraid of a thought and you're trying not to think that
Mm-hmm.
thought, Dr. Jazz, if I said, don't think about an elephant,
Mm-hmm.
what just happened?
I keep thinking about that elephant.
And that's what happens. When
Mm-hmm.
you struggle, especially with emotion like fear, when you struggle not to think a thought, you're actually doubling down. I've got a sister who lives outside of Las Vegas. Okay. You're actually doubling down on that thought. And it increases the emotional intensity and your subconscious mind. This is
Mm-hmm.
what most people don't know about their brain.
Mm-hmm.
Subconscious mind is elegantly designed to bring about what you think about.
Mm-hmm.
And it pays attention to the thoughts that are consistent and imbued with emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So when you've wrapped a thought in fear because you don't want your parents to worry and you don't want somebody to think you need help and you're afraid that your boss will find out and
Mm-hmm.
you're afraid to tell anyone because they might report you and you'll have to go into a 72-hour psychiatric hold, which is most of the states in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
There are all these reasons why fear, 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 fear.
Yep.
And so now your brain says, oh, look at what you're thinking about. Look at all this energy. Let's
Mm-hmm.
create a plan because that's what your subconscious mind is designed to do, is
Mm-hmm.
to look for and create opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
bring about what you think about.
Okay. That makes sense.
With a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
you get subconscious plan meeting opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
They are in action because they are impulsive by nature. They don't have a pause button of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
This is why our tax dollars in this country have been used to install jump nets on bridges.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, by the way, they call this the law of attraction. This is
Okay.
law of attraction in action in the way that most people don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie Ford talked about the shadow. She's no longer with us, and I don't think that she ever took it as far as helping people understand suicidal tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
But this is simply the other extreme from what they were talking about in The Secret. I mean, John Assaraf said, thoughts become things.
Mm-hmm.
I think he missed a step. Thoughts fueled by emotion coupled with action
Mm-hmm.
produce results.
Okay.
I call it the cycle of results, and that's 4 out of the 5 steps of the cycle of results.
Mm-hmm.
The thought, the emotion produces an action, and that produces a result. And God love them. The people who take their own lives have
Mm-hmm.
bought 2 things. Why do you do what you do, Dr. Jazz? Do you know?
With this show or in
With,
life in general?
with life in general, why do you do what you do?
Because I have dreams and ambitions to keep going forward. I think I set myself a goal and an agenda and I reach for it. I aspire to reach for it.
Each action that
Mm-hmm.
you take because in that instant, it seems like the best idea.
Yeah.
The same is true with suicide.
Mm.
People take their own lives because taking their own lives seems like the best idea at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's why we do anything.
Yeah.
Our mission in the world is not to take suicide off the table. That's not what advocates do. That's not what our talk leaders do. We're
Mm-hmm.
not trying to take that option off the table. All we're doing by asking the question, what are your reasons for staying, is
Mm-hmm.
helping you see that
Yeah.
you have other options. It
Right.
prevents the one thing that has to be in place emotionally for suicide to occur. You ready?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hopelessness.
Mm. Yeah.
The slide from unhappy to helpless
Mm-hmm.
to hopeless
Mm-hmm.
is really fast.
Mm. Yeah.
Our mission is to intervene with giving people reasons for staying up here at the happy, unhappy trigger
Mm-hmm.
so that they never slide into feeling helpless or hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
So we are way upstream, and that's where we want to stay.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. I say that one more time. I think you were breaking up just then.
That's why what we do is a
Uh-huh.
lot of fun.
Yep.
Whether it's the people I interview on the suicide prevention show, or
Mm-hmm.
it's people who come into the course, The Talk That Saves Lives.
Yeah.
Our goal is to have fun first,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the fastest path to stopping suicidal thinking. You
Yeah.
cannot have both of those going on at the same time.
Okay. So then let me ask you, Jackie, with this knowledge and with your experience and doing your business for the past couple of years, how do you know when is a proper time to do this role play with the questions so that you can assess somebody, or do you do it with everybody? How do you kind of prioritize who's getting these 4 questions versus maybe just somebody that you've met and having a casual conversation and then that's kind of the end of it?
Good question. Someone asked me, Jackie, how young is too young
That's a great
to
one too.
practice this guide, to read this guide with my child?
Mhm,
And I asked them, how old is your child?
mhm,
And it doesn't matter what they tell me.
mhm,
The answer is they're the perfect age.
mm,
When the Center for Disease Control has statistics on children as young as 6 years of age,
mhm,
consciously taking their own lives, consciously choosing dying over living,
mhm.
you cannot do it wrong. You cannot start too young.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why I've partnered with people who do emotional intelligence card games, neuro gamified card games for children as young as 3 years old.
Okay.
So we're launching teen talks now. We're launching toddler talks in just
Wow.
a few weeks,
Wow.
because you can't do this wrong. You cannot start
Right.
too young. The time to start is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time to start is now. I mean, somebody can watch my TEDx talk and
Mhm,
they can take notes on the 4 questions and
mhm,
they can say, hey, I just watched this TEDx talk. Can I ask you these 4 questions?
mhm,
They can listen to this podcast again where I walked you through the 4 questions. And the
mhm,
only difference between the TEDx talk and what we did is that I actually paused
mhm,
and said thank you and paused before I ask the next question. Oh, and by the way, these questions are designed to be asked verbatim, exactly as they're written, for a reason.
okay.
They're in neutral language
Yeah.
to prevent people being triggered.
Mhm,
If you go back and listen to this, when you said, oh, and when you asked me about such and so, your language was dramatically different than the
mhm,
question that I asked. And that's why the question we ask has to be neutral, because you're going to go to an emotional place anyway.
mhm, mhm,
And our goal is to bring it from concept of have you heard about the rise in teen suicides
mhm,
to community Do you have a friend who's tried or died?
Mm-hmm.
To personal, have you ever thought of leaving that way? To prevention, what are
Mm-hmm.
your reasons for staying?
Okay.
And so this is very specifically designed,
Yeah.
and it works with your brain the way your brain naturally works.
Mm-hmm.
What if we stop trying to fight our brains and actually work with our brains?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why my first TEDx script became the Why Not workbook, which is
Mm-hmm.
like a do it yourself guide to break the silence on suicide. Now, on the cover, it says teen suicide, but to break the silence on suicide. No
Mm-hmm.
matter what age you are now, you were a teen once, so assume it applies to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Jackie, this is going to be aired during Suicide Prevention Month. And before we started recording, you did mention that there are resources out there. So, I would love if you can just share with the world what the resources are so that they can tap into that this month.
All right. There are 5.
Okay.
This is going to be interesting. Here we go. Here are the 5 resources in their order and what I think is important.
Okay.
If you want to learn the talks that save lives, we are giving them away for free. This entire 6-hour training. It's a $497
Wow.
program. We are giving it to anyone age 13 or older. If you're between the ages of 13 and 18, you must have a responsible adult fill out the application with you. But we'll
Okay.
give you the application form.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing. Come take the 6 hours of training, impact 20 lives in a positively powerful way,
Okay.
change the world. So that's first.
Okay.
Second is during Suicide Prevention Month, there's something called the Global Maps event, MAPS event, globalmapsevents.com.
Okay.
And that's a 1 week long, you could call it a summit, but oh my God, is it really an event? It starts off with a concert
Mm-hmm.
with people from American Idol.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, oh my God. And it's a global event. I mean,
Yeah.
we've got presenters from Ireland and Australia and Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and it runs all week, September 12th to 18th.
Okay.
And there are special things for kids on Saturday, the 18th.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big event that people can tap into.
Okay.
There are 2 other things from me that are always there.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is you can't tell by looking.com, which
Mm-hmm.
is where people can get the suicide risk factor assessment and the talk to stop suicide without
Okay.
attending a class or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the kicker. What if you could get to know, like, and trust yourself just a little bit more?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it took for me to break the silence. For me to stand on a stage, I had to know myself as being okay.
Mm.
I had to like myself for being myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had to trust myself as being the right person for the job.
Yeah.
And the know, like, and trust factor assessment is my gift to everyone on your show. And they can
Okay.
find it at a website. And this is the world according to Jackie, guys. Here's my philosophy for living in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it wrong.com.
Mm-hmm.
Once you embrace you can't do it wrong,
Mm-hmm.
everything gets easier. Decisions get easier.
Yeah.
Life gets easier.
Okay.
And there are 2 questions people can ask that
Mm-hmm.
will make this all make sense. Do we have time for 2 questions?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So the first question is about attitude.
Okay.
What attitude would you have if you believed that you worked with the right people, the right coworkers, the right clients,
Mm.
the right vendors, the right bosses, the best, not just the right ones, but the best
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
world? What attitude would you have if you believed you worked with the best in the world?
I think I would always be on cloud 9. If everything is so perfect in Jasmine's perfect idea of a perfect world, I think I would be on cloud 9.
So here's the deal. You do. You already work with the absolute best coworkers, employees, bosses,
Mm-hmm.
clients, vendors in the world that you're ready for.
Okay.
How do we know? It's who you've got. As soon as you start treating them
Mm-hmm.
from this energy of I would be on cloud nine, as soon as you start showing up on cloud nine and treating them as if they are the best in the world, you know what happens?
They become the best in the world.
They either step up
Mm-hmm.
or step out
Oh, yeah.
and make room for somebody else.
Okay.
The power that you have by controlling your own attitude, by assuming that you're working with the best in the world that you're ready for and treating them like they're the best in the world,
Mm-hmm.
that changes how they show up.
Okay.
Energetically, it has to. That's
Yeah.
how resonance works. So that's the first question about attitude. You ready for
Mm-hmm.
the second one?
Yeah.
What action would I take if I knew I was the right person for the job?
Take it.
That question, what actions would I take if I knew I
Mm-hmm.
was the right person for the job?
Mm-hmm.
Only reason I had guts enough to take a TEDx stage.
Mm-hmm.
It
Okay.
was the only reason.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was, yeah, I mean, and I've spent my whole life on the opposite side of that question, absolutely certain I was not the right person for the job. They call it
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that imposter syndrome is nothing more than not knowing that you could make a decision to decide that you're the right person for the job.
Right. Yeah.
It is the one sentence question that cures imposter syndrome
Mm-hmm.
by simply asking, not how would I feel, but what actions would I take?
Mm-hmm.
Because the cycle of results is not, a simple circle.
Mm-hmm.
When you start taking different actions, you start triggering different emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you not only get different results when you take different actions, but you actually start triggering different emotions, and that leads to different thinking.
Yeah.
And eventually, that will pull you into a different belief about how you work, how the world works, and how your place in the world could be.
Mm-hmm.
This whole cycle is where I started many
Mm-hmm.
years ago, with understanding that if I want a different result, I simply have to take a different action, which means I need to have a different emotion, which
Mm.
means I need to have a different thought, which is a heck of a lot easier when you have a different belief system because my BS, my
Mm-hmm.
belief systems were triggering cycles that kept me stuck.
Oh.
So that's why I got into what I'm doing now.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was incredibly informative. I mentioned to you that I'm a nurse manager, but what I neglected to tell you and omitted to tell you was that I'm actually a pediatric nurse. And so working at the children's hospital, we see this all the time. And it's just like I'm sitting here like connecting the dots and I was like, oh my gosh, how can we utilize this? This is so incredibly informative. And I'm like, I need to like hurry up and get this aired so that I can send it over to our mental health experts so that they can listen and connect with you. And I think this is incredibly great information. I think whether you are in the healthcare field or you're a parent of a child, whether they're 3 or 13, it doesn't matter, right? I think this is incredible information that everybody can take away with. And of course, thank you too for creating this program and having the resources available now during Suicide Prevention Month. We'll definitely get this word out for sure.
Thank you.
So, Jackie, sometimes I don't know what I don't know. So, are there any last minute things that you would like to discuss or bring up? Any topics that you just want to make sure that we get out there into the world for everybody to hear?
Don't wait.
Okay.
Break the silence.
Yes.
Have the talk.
Mm, that's important. That's important. I think and I can't I can go on and this show can go on forever, but I feel like there's so many instances where I feel like whether it's as a veteran in the military and being in that world of things, or being a pediatric nurse, or being a mom of teenagers, there's so many instances where I've seen other people in that support system not support in the right type of way. And I think, going back to what you were saying, just kind of suppressing it, ignoring it, pretending like it's not there, it does so much more harm than good. But we don't realize we're doing it, because we have our own reasons for not wanting to face it head on. But we really need to address many of the things. And I think you've given everybody a really good starting point.
Oh, thank you. The goal was to take it out of the realm of, I think you're at risk. We need to have the talk.
Hmm.
And we call it the talk as a joke because, I mean, I was like, I did this whole ad campaign. Okay,
Hmm.
here's the bare knuckles truth. I did an ad campaign. Mom, Dad, are your teens at risk?
Hmm.
Do you wait to talk to your teen about sex until after they're pregnant?
Mm.
Do you
Yeah.
wait to talk to your teen about drugs until after they're in rehab?
Mm.
Do you wait to talk to your teen about alcohol until after they've lost their license for drunk driving?
Hmm.
Are you waiting to talk to your teen about suicide?
Hmm.
I got crickets. I got
Crazy.
crickets. Why? Because the public service announcements that I grew up with, that my kids grew up with, where it's like, this is your brain. This is your brain on
On
drugs.
drugs. Yeah.
When we were all around one screen and that would spark a conversation,
Uh-huh.
it worked.
Hmm.
The parents talking to a girl, honey, nobody's saying sex is bad, but at 13, it will kill your dreams.
Mm.
It sparked a conversation.
Hmm.
We were all around one screen.
Yeah.
Multiple generations of families were together. Now we don't even get 2 generations together, much less 4.
Mm.
What I realized is that people are not having the talks about sex and drugs and alcohol with their
Hmm.
kids. And
Hmm.
I was expecting them to have the talk about suicide.
Hmm.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. Wow.
So, what we did was instead of trying to reach out to parents,
Hmm.
we realized that this guide, this talk, this script builds emotional resiliency in both the practice partner
Hmm.
and the practicer.
Hmm.
So, what if teens started having this talk with their parents?
Mm. Hmm.
It would have the same effect.
Yeah.
And so we stopped trying to get parents to have to talk about suicide with their kids because I didn't want to do it. Why, even though my kid attempted,
Hmm.
what was I thinking that anybody would want to do this? So even though we've made it fun, we've made it simple, we've made it stigma free, we've made it
Hmm.
proactive, not reactive. We have
Yeah.
done every single thing we could think of. What I realized is parents are hardwired to believe that their kids are okay.
Hmm.
And from that absolute solid line BS, that belief system that my kid's okay,
Hmm.
this is hard for them to imagine that their kid or any of their kids' friends are at risk,
Hmm.
never become at risk.
Hmm.
What we're finding out is that the rate of suicide among college students is skyrocketing. And there are some New England colleges that have
Hmm.
names that everyone would recognize that do not want the suicide rate in their schools revealed.
Mm.
And the highest suicide rate high school in the United States
Hmm.
is in Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
There's
Wow.
a pressure cooker going on that we're not talking about, and it's stealing a generation from us. And this was happening before COVID.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, what we've decided is that instead of trying to teach adults to have the talks the same lives, I mean, we are doing that. Okay. We've got the program, the talks
Hmm.
the same lives. Any adult can take the program. Any adult can get trained to be a talk leader. They can take it into their company. They can take it into their hospital. They can take it into their kids' schools. We've got,
Hmm. Hmm.
but where we're going to have fun right now, because it's launching September 2021.
Yeah.
Teenagers,
There you go.
emotional cage fighting.
Mm. Hmm.
To suicide proof your friends.
Hmm.
This is coming to your screen.
Wow.
You want to stop worrying about your friends,
Hmm.
want to start being able to sleep at night, not worried about yourself or somebody you know, not being
Mhm.
in the morning because it's happening in every school around the country.
Yeah.
Step up, learn how to do emotional cage fighting.
Mhm.
Being a student of emotional cage fighting, you will positively impact 20 of your peers, maybe even your parents if you're that brave, and
Mhm.
you'll change the world. And
Yeah.
once you know that you have positively impacted 20 people,
Mhm.
you won't have to see yourself as a leader. You will see how you have led.
Mm.
Because in my world, a leader is not the person who stands up and says, "Fuck me."
Mhm.
In my world, a leader, true leadership, a
Mhm.
leader is the person who stands up and says, I'll go first.
Yep. Mhm.
My
All
dad
right.
was a beret. My dad was a medic, Green
Uh-huh.
Beret.
Okay.
My dad in Vietnam jumped out of helicopters and airplanes without a weapon, places you don't want to be without a weapon.
Mm.
That legacy is what I am bringing into the emotional cage fighting. What if it was more important to suicide proof the people around you than it was for you to be comfortable?
Mm. Mhm. Imagine that.
Imagine that, Dr.
Yeah.
Jack.
Wow. So incredible, Jackie. Thank you so much. I think there's just such a wealth of knowledge coming out of you, and I think the show can go on and on forever. But I do appreciate everything that you've provided. So, for those, one more time, how can they get a hold of you and get the support that they need, or find more information on how to get in contact with you and your resources?
It can start with the website you can't do it wrong.com. No punctuation, just squish it together.
Okay.
Or they can reach out by email to team, TEAM,
Mhm.
at JackieSimmons.com. And my team will make sure that you get the help that you're looking for.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing all the knowledge that you have. And I hope that there will be lots of people in touch with you soon.